Fathers?
100K Fathers, yep.
What's 100K Fathers?
100K Fathers is an organization that is dedicated to helping 100,000 fathers reunite with their children.
Now, I think we asked this offline. We'll take that offline.
Yeah.
Is the goal? So is it currently at 100 fathers, or you're trying to build to
Let's circle back to that question.
Table that. We'll do that offline.
Yeah, Nick just got his first taste of corporate world, and he loves it. Now, I think there's probably been about 200 fathers that have been participant in this organization so far. The director, Gary Junkun, sorry, Gary, if I jacked your name up. He was alienated from his children. International guy, actually, from South Africa originally. And he went on this inspirational journey and decided to start this group. He was inspired to basically say, I'm going to figure out how to do this and help 100,000 fathers reunite with their children. He started that journey probably about 5 years ago. He has since reunited with at least one of his children, and he has developed a really amazing curriculum to help fathers who have lost contact with their children to cope and to reestablish themselves so that you're not just left floundering in the breeze. When you lose your kids in the manner that I lost my kids, you find yourself just completely lost. You have one of the most beautiful things in your life, and then all of a sudden it's gone, and nothing makes sense. You don't know why. And wrapping your head around that and learning how to cope with that despite your circumstances dictating that your life is over is really difficult. I spent probably the better part of 7 years trying to figure out how to cope with it alone. And then I met Gary, went through his program, and then part of this community.
How long ago was that? When did you start with this group?
I started that program a year ago, and it was a fundamental shift in my overall mental health. Really life-changing experience for me. I got a testimony video on the website that just talks about the impact of the program in just 8 weeks. One of the foundational elements of it is being part of a community, being a part of the community of other men who've been through that. And the scary part, this is frightening and affirms the spiritual warfare aspect of what parental alienation is, or even just divorce and parental separation in general, is that the dudes who are in this group say the same story over and over again. It's the same mannerisms, it's the same accusations, it's the same MO. Every single guy has shared the same things. Well, this is what she did, and she did this, and she did this, and there's 10 other people on that call that say, hey, me too, man. The nuances are a little different, but every single one of those stories, it's the same exact type of flavor.
Well, there was a book out wrote by Mark Driscoll called New Days and Old Demons. It's the same attack from the enemy, just in a modern time.
It's just so frightening that it's so prevalent, and it's the mask of divorce, and then you've got the silver bullet, if you guys have never heard that phrase. Silver bullet meaning that when men and women get divorced, women will say, well, there was sexual assault. And that's an automatic removal from that parent. Without
proof.
Yeah, without proof, because in family court circles, you are guilty until proven innocent. It's not like our legal system as it is. You have to actually have substantiated proof, because the accusation itself is so heavy enough that if it were true, we want to be taking a conservative approach to it. So they say, well, most conservative approach, accusation, remove the kids, and then we'll investigate. And that starts a whole traumatic cycle where the children have to have what's called a forensic investigation, which means that they're basically questioned. It's a really intense, uncomfortable experience for everybody involved.
And what's scary about that, I hate using that word scary as a Christian, but what's troubling about that, we'll say it that way, is one, if there is no trauma to these kids, and maybe they haven't experienced that, or they're not ready for that conversation, they're just thrown into that with a complete stranger.
Oh, yeah.
Which is traumatizing the kids.
I mean, it's traumatizing overall. I mean, that you mentioned not being scary. Well, when something of that caliber happens, you lose all the color in your face. I mean, I can just remember the sensation of fear that overtook my body and consumed me for the better part of probably 2 years. The waking up every day and not feeling my skin, like just scared and anxious, never knowing what the next move was, living in a constant state of PTSD. It's awful, man. So, yeah.
So back to 100K Fathers.
Yeah.
So this was founded 8 years ago.
I think it was about 5 years ago. I can't remember exactly. But I've been a part of it for the last year. I was brief. We did a wisdom advisory council that I was a part of. So trying to figure out how do we pick this up and move it away from focused on just alienated fathers, and how do we provide commentary to fatherhood as a whole. What's the direction the organization could go? Those conversations have kind of stalled right now, but the goal is to look at, one, the role of fathers and the importance of our function in a child's life is paramount. The studies have backed that up consistently. When children are placed in, if a child is placed primarily in a home with a mother versus a home with a father, the child in the home with the father primarily does better in terms of performance, grades, success afterwards, vice the child being in a home that's primarily just the mother. What that study really indicates is that the role of a father is just incredibly important.
Yeah.
So using that as a foundational piece, how do we then engage with children in foster care? How do we engage with children whose fathers died early? How do we engage with children who maybe just never really had a father figure in their life that are now adults? And then how do we help these adults figure that out? How do we maybe set up a mentorship program where men who want to be fathers but for a reason outside of their control cannot be? So we were discussing those potential pathways forward.
And then because we all started this little group on a camping trip, you mentioned earlier that you guys have a camping trip coming up. Where's that at? And tell us about that.
So yeah, there's actually a dude from Canada. He started a group called Fathers for Fathers, faith-based ministry. He himself has been alienated. He joined 100K Fathers, and it'll be a collaborative effort where we pull together these two groups. We're thinking maybe 10 to 15 people, and there was interest to come to West Virginia, so I was like, hey,
awesome.
man, let me put it on display, and I threw together a quick slideshow. It was like, hey, we can go stay in Canadian Valley area and then branch out. We can either go Dolly Sods or Seneca Creek Wilderness, or we can go do a day hike at Seneca Rocks, and like there's just so much going on down in Pocahontas County, George Washington National Forest. And I was like, fellas, this is it, man.
So what's the prep like for that many people going out in the wilderness?
Yeah, it really depends, man. So we're considering assessing it from two ends. You've got to look at the skill set of the people that are coming with. Like when we all went out, I threw together that packing list and said, hey guys, here's what you got to do. And I think for you were like, oh man, this is real. Okay, we're really doing this thing. And you were a newie. So how do you help a guy out like this, assure that he's physically fit enough to do something like that, and then make sure that they have the tools and resources available without spending $1 bazillion? Because it's a significant investment,
especially in this economy. We'll get to that.
Yeah. So we're looking at it from two different lenses. One is we might end up doing like a base camp thing for the folks that may not want to participate in the hike, although getting out there and doing the suck is part of it.
Yeah.
And then the other pieces, we're looking at a 3 to 4 day loop around Dolly Sods. So first step is gauging the interest of the folks that are going to be a part of it. And then second is classifying those people into the appropriate groups, leaning toward the more physically strenuous as the goal, simply because there's benefit to that. Getting out there, struggling together, working hard, depending on yourself, living out of a bag on your back. There's an element to that ties to our masculinity. So once we figure that out, setting up a route, setting up the logistics to support that. How are people getting here? Where are people staying? Where are we starting? How are we starting? Looking at support structures, like where's the nearest hospital in the event that an emergency takes place, making sure that you've got safety and planning is critical, and then communicating that to somebody else. So anytime you make a plan going anywhere, have that plan established and communicate with someone not going with expected. We are going in this time and anticipate us to be out this time. If you don't hear from me, here's the Rangers number.
Mm-hmm.
So
and breaking up in groups with experienced people and
there you go.
Leaders of each group stuff.
That's it too, especially when you're going into a wilderness area. You want to respect the area itself. If you take a group of 15 people in the backwoods, you're going to make an impact. So if we have a group that big, we're going to probably split it up into about 5-person groups. We'll have an experienced leader go with each one of those groups. They'll assess each person along the way. We'll have some type of secondary backup plan in the event a guy rolls his ankle or whatever the case may be. So you just have to think about everything in advance and always plan for a worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm. You're sitting there talking about all these guys out in the woods, and when you get out deep into the wilderness, the bonding that happens,
male bondage,
it's awesome. So camping trip coming up. Tell us what's one thing about you've really learned with 100K Fathers, and do out the shout outs, the website and contact info if you can.
Yeah. So again, 100K Fathers. The biggest thing that I've learned from it is that you're not alone. I've recently had a win, and I have not been shy about what I've been facing in my life. And I had dinner with one of my kids this past week. So, the idea behind 100K Fathers is, as men, we need to be a lighthouse. And by that meaning, you are this structure that is there, ever present, visible, stoic.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. You are not affected by the chaos going around you. And if we can strive to be that thing for our families, this foundational element that is immovable, doesn't matter what you do, what happens out there, I will always be here, and I will always be looking out for you, and I will always be available to you when you need me.
Yeah.
And one of the foundational pieces, I've said that phrase several times, is understanding that the goal isn't to get your kids back. The goal is, how do we get you to be the man you need to be if and when your kids return, or when and if your kids return. That shift in mindset was huge. For years, I was trying to figure out, how do I solve this? I may not be able to solve it. My kids may never come home. And I have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And by shifting my mind in conjunction with this group and that lighthouse mindset, it's been really helpful.
Well, I think that right there is great advice for any father, whether you have your kids or not.
Oh, absolutely. But we don't ever think about that. We take for granted the fact that, well, my family's here. My kids are here. They're not going anywhere. Okay. Until something happens.
Well, I think even from your standpoint where, for a while you were fighting to get your kids back, but you have to, like you said, change your mindset to, okay, they're not with me now, but I'm still their dad. I'm going to be their dad.
Yep.
I'm going to be there whenever you need me, available whenever you need me. If you come back, come. I'll welcome you in. But if not, I'm still your dad. You're still my son, my daughter. I'm here for you.
Yeah.
Where you are doesn't change the fact that you're not my kid or anything.
Absolutely.
So that's good.
That's a huge piece of it. So website is 100kfathers.com. You can see testimony videos. It's a good place to be if you're hurt, if you're trying to figure things out. And even if you don't want to reach out to those guys, you can reach out. I do one-on-one sessions with dudes all the time. So if you're listening to this and you're struggling with some type of your kids left or whatever, reach out. I'd be happy to talk to you about my experience and provide some tools for you. You need help. And I think that's the biggest recommendation. Don't do this alone. Find someone to help you. Find someone with experience to help you. As soon as you do it with someone who's walked that path, man, the dynamic changes.
Yep. As men, we sometimes don't like to admit that we want help or need help. That's not being a man.
Mm-hmm.
It's being selfish and kind of being a coward, in my opinion. But what do I know? We'll put all the contact information down in the description of the video and on the podcast. But thanks for sharing, Andy.
Marka.
America.